Scriptures to the Gospel of Luke, the 10th chapter, where we hear a story of Jesus. So I invite you now to hear the Word of God. Which is in there somewhere. Now, as they went on their way, Jesus entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And her sister named Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to Jesus and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Pray with me. O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, you who are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So I was talking to my seminary roommate, Phil, this last week. And I like to talk to my seminary roommate because we're friends, but also he has some really good sermon ideas. And why should I not give you good stuff just because I didn't think of it? So anyway, so I'm going to share with you some of the things that Phil talked about as we were talking about Pokemon Go. Do we have any players out there? No? None? We do have some, I know, because I've seen it. Anyway, Pokemon Go is a video game that you play with your smartphone. It came out on July 8th, and dozens of millions of people have downloaded this game. 2 Mondays ago, there were 21 million people who played the game 2 Mondays ago. Most of them over 65. Okay, that's a lie. Anyway, but Pokemon Go is a rather unique game. In Pokemon, there are monsters roaming the land. And your job as a player is to find them, to capture them, and then you train them. Now, what makes Pokemon Go differently than the original Pokemon game is that Pokemon Go is, they call it an augmented reality game, which means you go out and you find this Pokemon in the real world. Now, you see that picture there? That's TJ Hokanson in the background, because if you're a player, you choose your own likeness, your own virtual person. That's our own TJ in the background, and that is a creature there. But in front, you can sort of see the roof of our church, the roof line of our church. And if you close in a little bit, at the top of it, you'll see the next one. That is actually our church sign, because there is actually a gym out in front of the education building. A gym is a place where you can take your Pokemon creatures and train them so that they can be better in battle. You all really need to know this. So then, go back to there's TJ in front of the church. But there are also what you will find even more clear pictures like this next one. This is actually, you walked right past this little fellow when you walked into church this morning. That's Bulbasaur right there. He doesn't look nearly as scary as his name is. But anyway, that's the front door of our church. And actually, that little creature is there. If you're playing the game, you can come and try to capture that little creature and make him part of your Pokedex, which is your little database of Pokemon creatures that you have captured. Okay, very interesting, right? But why? Why on earth would I spend this much time talking about this in a sermon? What possible itch does Pokemon Go scratch? And what, if anything, would Pokemon Go have to do with the gospel of Jesus Christ? Well, let's ask Mary and Martha. Mary and Martha. This is a very familiar story to many of us. Mary and Martha are sisters. They're also the sisters of Lazarus, whom in a later story, Lazarus dies and is raised from the dead by Jesus, but that's a story for another day. Today, it's Martha who sees Jesus coming through a certain village and invites him into her home. Now, when you invite a traveler into the home in the Middle East, the laws of hospitality instantly apply, and you are welcoming your guests. You are washing their feet. You are preparing their food, and not just any food, really good food. And so Martha immediately gets to work. But Mary doesn't. Mary does not. Now, in this world of that day, the women did the work, while the men would entertain the guests. So what Mary does, very intentionally, is sit at the feet of Jesus. And like we were talking with the children, that phrase, sit at the feet of Jesus, that's a very specific phrase. It's not just, well, that just happens to be where Mary sat down. No, if you sat at the foot of a teacher, that meant you wanted to be their student. You want to be their disciple. You want to be their follower. And in those days, women did not do this. But there is Mary, quietly but unmistakably, sitting at the feet of Jesus where only a man would sit. And what's more, saying, I want to be your follower, your student, your disciple, as only men would do. So this story really isn't about, well, who's doing the work and what's fair and what's not fair. This is about Mary breaking out of her cultural heritage, breaking out of everything she had ever been taught about how to be a woman, how to be a person, how to be her. Breaking out of that and making an incredibly different choice about who she wants to be in her life. And of course, Martha, who the scripture tells us is distracted by many things. Martha comes up and asks Jesus, and come on, help me make Mary do what she ought to be doing, what we all know Mary should be doing. And of course, Jesus says, no. Mary has chosen a different path. Mary's chosen a better path in this moment. And we won't take that away from her. And of course, Jesus had, the 12 disciples who were all men, but the 12 apostles who were all men, but he had many, many more disciples, and many of them were women. Many of them were women. Jesus was constantly breaking down the barriers in his day. And so he had women disciples. And in fact, you know who the very first preacher of the Christian gospel is on Easter Day? It's Mary Magdalene. Not one of the 12, not one of the men. It's Mary Magdalene, who's the very first Christian preacher. So there's Mary, sitting at the feet of Jesus, wanting to be a student, wanting to be a disciple. Now, Martha isn't wrong. I mean, she's doing what she's been trained and brought up to do, and work needs to be done, sure. But Mary has just made a different choice. She's choosing a different reality. She's responding to something more than what she's been taught, more than what she has ever seen in her life. And what's motivating her to do that is the presence of her teacher and her master. Mary wants to see a different world. Now, Pokemon Go is an augmented reality game which invites you to see a different world. Like that picture of our door, the door we walk through every Sunday, and yet, when you play the game, there's something more there that you can't see with your eyes. My friend Phil says that we are living in a diminished world. And he quotes a philosopher, Charles Taylor, who wrote a book called A Secular Age. And he says, the story of the modern world is a subtraction story. The magic, the mystery, the supernatural, and the transcendent have all been subtracted from the world we live in. So that what we have left in our world are humanistic and materialistic and understandings of the way things are. For the first time in human history, it is now perfectly plausible to go about our daily business without any reference to God at all. Everything can be explained rationally, according to scientific cause and effect, logically, sensibly. Subtraction stories have reduced our perception of what is real and have diminished our lives in the process. Now, Pokemon Go is an addition story. Pokemon Go reverses that trend and says, no, when you're going to play the game, there is more to the world than you can see. There's more to the world than you can see. And just maybe that's why so many young people are attracted to it. Just as kids of a previous generation were attracted to Harry Potter. What was it that got kids into Harry Potter so much? Just maybe that there is more to the world than what we can see, than what we can explain with logic or science. Maybe there's more to it. And Pokemon Go is a little game that says, just maybe there is more to the world than we know. Now, the gospel of Jesus Christ is also an addition story. The gospel tells us there is more to the world than what we can see. The gospel tells us that there is a mystery and a transcendence and a presence within the world that maybe we cannot measure or touch, but nonetheless, it's there. But it takes training to see it. It takes sitting at the feet of our teacher to learn how to look at that world in a different way so that we see. We see more than our eyes can discover. Phil also says that we live in a disconnected world. He says, as a nation among nations, as the family of human beings who are living on the same planet, we are polarized. In the past few months, it has gone from bad to worse. We've seen violence, hatred, mass shootings, and terrorist attacks. Political discourse within the two-party system has reached a new low. And meanwhile, we huddle in groups of like-minded people and seek to justify ourselves. Pokemon Go actually brings people together. One of the pluses that you read about Pokemon Go is that you don't play it looking at a screen in your own room by yourself. No, you have to get out and go out and play it. And you'll find people playing this game together on a team. I found 4 teenagers out front last week, sitting in the car at 9:30 at night. Because there's a gym right out there, and they were fine, and they were laughing, they were having a good time. Very different than some video games that sort of keep people in their homes. This had brought them out, searching for something a little bit more. Well, the gospel of Jesus Christ connects people. It brings people together despite the obvious differences we have. The gospel of Jesus Christ says, no, what is essential about who we are transcends all those differences. Again, the gospel of Jesus Christ is an addition story. Now today we are ordaining elders and deacons in our church, and that means that not only they, but all of us have the opportunity to recommit ourselves to being God's people in a world that seems diminished, a world that seems disconnected. Now, playing Pokemon Go might help a little in that it's hit some of those themes, but in the end, it's an escape. But to really make a difference, in our lives, to make a difference in our world, then the ultimate addition story is the story of Jesus Christ. And we need, like Mary, to choose the better part and to sit at the feet of Jesus and learn how to see a different world. How to see a world that's connected. How to see a world in which all of us are connected, and not only because each and every human being on the planet shares 99.9% of the same DNA, but also because we all share the fact that we are made in the image of God. When we sit at the feet of Jesus, we realize that the world is not as diminished as perhaps we thought. That there is actually more to the world than what we can see, that there are spiritual realities, that hope and forgiveness and grace are actually tangible things, tangible gifts that we can give and receive to one another. If we sit at the feet of Jesus, if we really pay attention, we can learn how to live not in a diminished, disconnected world, but in a world that is enchanted by the grace of God. But you have to sit at the feet of Jesus to learn how to see that world. And that takes time. Take the time. Pray with me. Lord, we all have enough time for what is most important. Help us to take the time. For Christ's sake, for the world's sake, and our own sakes. Amen.